Here, and I've got a couple of special guests actually. You may or may not know their faces. Obviously, we've got Stephen Burke here from Gamers Nexus, as well as Patrick. And I feel like Patrick might be an unsung hero, more so than I even realized until today. So Steve just spent the entire day here with us, helping us kind of redo some of our lab practices here. We're gonna get into that today, but I got some questions I want to ask him. For those looking for a high-end custom gaming experience, look no further than Falcon Northwest. Falcon Northwest has been building PCs made for gamers for over 30 years with a focus on a true high-end gaming experience. Custom cases available only through Falcon Northwest feature state-of-the-art testing and design to ensure that every component is performing at their best through thermal imaging and rigorous lab testing designed and overseen by the Falcon Northwest founder himself. With a complete lineup of systems ranging from small to large, every Falcon Northwest system includes a 3-year warranty policy and a year of 2-way overnight shipping coverage, providing the ultimate peace of mind. To see all that Falcon Northwest has to offer, follow the sponsored link in the description below. Okay, so we just spent literally going on 12 hours right now with you here in the lab. So first and foremost, how do you feel how today went?
I think we were talking about it, overall well, but we were talking about how it's, the thing I was talking with Patrick about before we came out was we need to start with defining what is it your goals are.
Because it could have been anything.
Well, and also just like you were saying, taking, I've been doing this 16 years now, in any competent capacity, maybe one, you know, but it's still distilling a lot of stuff down into a single day, and there's infinite things you can do with testing. It's really fun. It's fun. Like, there's a lot of stuff you can do. So it just comes down to, like, what's your version of that look like? And I think we set a really strong foundation with some game-specific stuff and then some power stuff, and now you have enough tools to expand both of those. So.
Can you kind of quickly explain the division of work between you and Patrick?
When it comes to testing, we both do a lot of different things. When it comes to testing, I will sort of set a lot of the methods and do a lot of the upfront research, like figuring out what are the possible pitfalls, what are all the places that there can be machine error or human error, and let's work to build a system that can avoid as many of those as possible. And then sort of defining the actual, what is it we want to publish, and managing the sort of audience, what does the audience want to see, and how do we set that expectation?
Right, and distilling that expectation alone is hard, because the audience, you're going to have, you know, now 2 million different opinions you know, on your end, and it's like making that meaningful.
Yeah, and so then, Patrick, I'll let you speak mostly for what you do, but to start it, for testing I mean, on the case side, Patrick more or less manages the sort of start to finish of the review of a case now.
Have a good one.
And has for quite a while. Same thing, I set up the sort of the method and how we wanted to test it, and then I handed it to Patrick.
Who's doing your case animations?
Andrew on the team.
That's not me, no.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure who your modeler was.
Yeah, Andrew's insanely
Seems
talented.
like he throws those out pretty fast.
Dude, he got some done in a day. The Haven animation, everyone wants to see what perspective on that, the Haven case. You remember that one? Like the
Not to be confused with Heaven.
Correct. Thank you for reminding me. It is still there, even though.
Look, one thing I learned today
it has
is
been 16 years since that benchmark came out.
the thing I love most about this is it's just for me, it's a moving thing in the background. It wasn't until today that I realized how much he hates it, and I now love it that much more.
And the fact that, like, if I frame it this way, then it's literally just.
Oh, great, thanks. I appreciate it, Phil. No, yeah, so the Haven animation, I asked him to do that.
That's the one that has that diverter plate.
That's right. Because I went to Andrew, I was basically, this is really complicated to explain, it'd be great if we could animate it. I think he had it done in a day, maybe 2.
Wow.
Yeah, so, but Patrick, I guess if you want to speak to some of the stuff you do.
Yeah, so Steve used to do all of this solo. So, I mean, a lot of what we as the team do...
How long have you been on the team?
So I've been working with GN in some capacity for 12 years.
Okay.
2012, is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then in full-time capacity?
Basically since the end of 2016.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not quite unsung. I've been sung a little bit, but
Thank
yeah.
you for saying that. I felt the same way.
A lot of what the team does is stuff that Steve doesn't have time to be everywhere all at once. So we're making things more efficient. We're running tests and taking care of processes that there are not enough hours in the day for. So Steve does the big picture, like what are the questions we want to answer, and generally how do we want to answer it, and then I do like some test development, a little bit of software development, and then for case reviews, I do most of the process.
You handle most of the case review.
And writing.
Did you do something in the industry prior to working at GN? Or were you just
I
self-taught?
was in high school.
Because you mentioned like you were working with GN like, while you were in high school, or
Yeah.
just coming out of high school. So I can't imagine there was a lot of industry experience you already had outside of just being self-taught.
Yeah, so
Neither
no
of
one
us,
and I think that's been something that Steve has maybe even wanted in the team members that he's hired. I mean, he's expressed that to me, that he values being able to learn the job more than like
It's a
having
very
degree in it.
specific. It's everything we just went through today. Like you were talking about wanting to hire for assistance with data and stuff like that, and there's definitely experts in data who know way more about it than I will ever know or anyone here. But this specific job is very peculiar.
Right.
There are people who can run a test and evaluate hardware. There's people who can analyze data. Combining those two things with also trying to figure out the consumer angle and what does the consumer need to know? How do we protect the consumer? And it's a really cool, unique thing. And there's bits and pieces of that exist in all kinds of fields.
Right.
But if you just go on the internet and you say, I want to hire a reviewer, if that person exists with that title, they probably are one of the few people you or I already know in some capacity.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a big pool of people
Yeah.
with that job experience. So yeah, no, it's really cool to hire people with basically no sort of formal experience, because I'd say the most useful common experience that exists is a test technician, where you would then train into whatever you like writing.
Because they obviously had to have at least intermediate knowledge with the hardware to be able to deep dive analytics.
Yeah, you have to be interested in hardware, but yeah, it's weird, right? It's like a combination of these technical skills and some engineering skills and then writing. And those three things don't always go together.
It's funny to hear Patrick say that you value someone that is either self-taught or is kind of enthusiast in this space outside of a career capacity, because when I worked in software, our main office was on the MIT campus in Cambridge. I mean, if you talk about a tech school, right, obviously you got Caltech,
you have limitless
you've got
geniuses
MIT.
there, yeah.
Well, our two main developers, the two lead developers, one was from Northeastern, which is ironic because that's like the rival school to MIT. So it's funny hearing them bicker, because both of them were MIT and Northeastern. But I remember asking them once, I said, how much did those schools prepare you for this job? And it's funny because both of them said the same thing. And I'm not saying anything against the education system, don't hear me wrong, but both of them said by the time they were done with their education, the languages and stuff had already changed so much, nothing they really learned translated into the field, other than what they've already taught themselves. What their education got them was their foot in the door to be able to move up within either the corporate structure or just show that you were capable of learning something
Yeah,
technical.
I was gonna say learning how to learn is pretty big, yeah.
But both of them had the same story that, by the time they were done with their 4+ years of or if they went on to grad school or not, everything had changed already. So it really, their portfolios of what they did as their side projects is what got them their jobs, not necessarily the education. But I don't even know the answer to this. What did you do prior to GN?
I guess web development for a bit. I started building websites when I was 12. I started selling services to build websites probably when I was about 14. And then did that for several years into GN. And
So have you only been self-employed then your entire adult life?
No, I did work for Dell for a little bit. So I worked at Dell for about a year on contract as a test technician, and then I learned a little bit of test engineering stuff from the people who were above me there, and that was super cool. Which it was basically some people who showed me the process of how do they define a test, and it was cool. The job was like, the person who kind of trained me explained it to me as your job is to break things and then explain how they were broken.
Which is exactly what I did with software.
Yeah, and it's a really fun job, and the best part about it, if anyone's interested in this industry but you're like not sure, look into testing as a field, like QA or being a technician, because you have all of the fun of getting to figure out how to break the thing and none of the responsibility of resolving it.
Yep.
So I would break the software or the hardware and throw the grenade over the wall, and then the developers have to deal with it for the next 6 months. And that's a pretty fun job. Not for the developers, but I liked it.
Yeah, and because I was lead of our automation and our testing suite stuff, having to convince developers sometimes that the problem
That it's a
exists
problem,
in
yeah.
code. So repro steps and obviously documentation was huge in that industry, and I think that's why I told you in the long form content you filmed, man, that prepared me and hurt me in so many ways for this field, because I was already facing burnout by the time I went full time here when it came to that level of data collection.
Yeah.
But I think I've been away from it long enough now, because I went full time self-employed in 2015. It's been 10
I
years.
remember the video.
Yeah.
You posted something about, yeah.
It's been 10 years, and I feel like now I'm kind of itching for that level of. So
back.
that segues me into what I think the audience might enjoy. You can't hurt my feelings, I promise. I know there have to have been plenty of instances
I
where
hate
you're like,
Heaven benchmark. It has to go.
okay, that's number one.
I thought you said I couldn't hurt your feelings.
No, that's number one thing you're
Is that
saying.
a tear? Are you crying?
No, it's on this side. They can't
Phil,
see
we
it.
need to cut.
Tell me right now anything that you're like, Jay, you just need to stop doing this. Or Jay, I don't agree with this. Jay, change this. Outside of heaven. I hear you on the heaven.
If I'm trying to provide actual meaningful feedback, I think memory, I don't know how it is right now, but I didn't know you guys ran into trouble with memory in the past getting stable. I think some of that probably came down to like VDIM or something, or just like some of the sub configuration options within BIOS. But honestly, I think like probably the most useful feedback I can give that's actionable and has a concrete thing you can do would be the documentation that they provide for reviews. I don't know how much you guys do or don't read that. It's interesting, so they're called review guides. We try to avoid anything that is written by the manufacturer with the intent to shape our opinion.
Right, I try to avoid any processes they say to go through.
So there's processes you need to check, but then there's like marketing we don't need. And so like the part we try to look at is the documentation on setup and like what weird things does this product require. And I think the thing I would advise is just sort of really reading through those.
Yeah.
Like spending more time up front prepping and reading or studying the thing you're working on, I think will avoid some of the sort of later challenges you end up making videos on. Now that said, you do get a lot of great content by taking the approach you do. So you don't have to do it that way.
So it's the, hey, I
right?
did a thing, hey, I f***ed it up, hey, I fixed the thing.
And that's
There's
cool.
3 pieces of content.
Exactly. So like all of that to say, if you want real feedback, that's my feedback. But also, I don't think you have to like change and do a massive overhaul of things because like everybody's kind of got their style.
Yeah, you know, I feel like the high-level content that I've always sort of enjoyed doing, because I've always tried to be an entry point into this world. I think what's happened is my high-level stuff stayed where it was at, but I think a lot of people started going deeper, which makes the gap between data more wide. And that's what I think I've been noticing now. It's like, okay, and not only that, it's my own interest now wanting to go a little bit deeper.
I mean,
go
that's good.
subterranean to some level.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Starting now.
And that's what I think matters is like, if it's something you really want to do personally and you find it interesting, then
I think it has to be, otherwise it's not sustainable.
yeah, exactly. The stuff we did today, like if you don't want to do that, you're gonna hate it. You know, it's so much work. That's number one, is like actually wanting to do it. The documentation's big. That'll help you a lot. Again,
To put it on record, he asked me, he said, do you want to take us through your normal process? And I said, no, I don't, because I do not think anything useful will come from that time sink.
fair enough.
I literally just hit the red button today.
The only, I'm trying to figure out, the only other thing that comes to mind, because you asked me directly, I will answer earnestly. The only thing that comes to mind is sometimes it feels like you might jump the gun a little bit on something you've kind of started discovering. As like if you dig just a little deeper, you can normally get to that answer. And then what ends up happening is like the piece comes out and it's not really fully formed. And so there's like, if you go hold it like 4 more hours, Jay, that's all I'm asking. 4 more
You're gonna
hours
have to
of
ask my
poking
wife
at
for
it.
those 4 hours. No. No, to be honest, some of that was popping into my head today when you were showing me some of the like, hey, here's a weird thing, and you were kind of bringing me through some of your old charts you've done where you actually have documented and showed publicly like some of those frame time things over there, right? I started at that point getting kind of like the aha moment, the eureka moment of, hey, I now have some realistic processes to try and iron out some of these weird outliers that I couldn't identify.
Yeah, it's like you knew there was something there, but you couldn't quite get to it.
Right.
And I think a lot of that is the tools, where it's like, if you don't, I mean, the knowledge that the tool exists is almost more important than how to use the tool.
Do you have a direct example of one of those, like if I just spent 4 more hours on it? Because right now, to me, in my mind, that's every test I've run.
I mean, it can always be that way. It's that way for us too. Like, there's always more. I can get you some. I'd have to.
Well, if you're having to think
That's
about it
the
that
sort of
hard, I feel a
broad.
little better. If you're like, well, there was this one time. Oh, there was this one time. Actually, just last week.
I don't have them loaded up. I don't walk around with them like in the clip. So, but broadly speaking, but again, like I don't want to infringe on your style either. I'm only answering it because you asked, but because it's important that everyone has their own style. And I mean, at the same time, like I get it. I'm trying to change and improve our stuff all the time, so I 100% get it. But it's that balance, right, of like, people go to you because they don't like me. And so you need to keep that too.
You know, audience diversity aside, that's not something I look at or consider. I don't look at it like, oh, okay, those people that make comments of, you're better than Steve, or you're better than Linus, or Linus is better than you, like, I find those comments kind of somewhat hurtful, because I'm genuinely friends with my peers in this space, and I don't think any of us look at other channels as danger or competition.
It's funny, the comments like that. Yeah, I mean, but I kind of.
I was given my haters an opportunity right now for the Jay, Steve's coming for you to do it right now, but you didn't, like you said, you weren't locked and loaded. You didn't have it ready to go, so I'm a little disappointed.
Right. Yeah, I came here with the plan to try and work through like, what is the most effective thing we can develop for you for testing? And that's what, like, I was talking with Patrick for the last couple weeks on and off. Like I said in our video, I don't know if it'll make it in, but I basically walk by and like, hey, write down this thing, make sure I remember to tell Jay, and then I walk away.
Well, again, I asked you even almost 6 months ago, can you help me improve my testing suite? And it's like, yeah, distill your 16 years into something you can teach in a day.
So,
And even then, we only hit one category truly today. And even then, it was just the foundation of that category.
So I don't making use of like Patrick's unique presence here. What do you think are the steps that make the most sense for him to do next? Because I was really struggling with. There's so much that you could possibly do that it's completely overwhelming to try and even imagine where do I start to talk to you without just.
Alexa, start a 20-minute timer.
20 minutes, starting now.
Being like, "Ugh," and
Yeah,
you're
data dump
overwhelmed.
for hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think writing down processes is going to help for all of us. And I mean, I know you're going to be doing some of that, but even just for us, like it's
Well
been
met.
a huge help
See ya
to
soon.
record what we're doing and make it repeatable, and make sure that everybody's like going through, making sure that all the members of the team, when we have multiple sets of hands on benches, that everybody's doing the same things to the hardware and treating it the same way.
Yeah, that way you know whoever was in front of you. Like if you and Phil are sharing responsibility on a product, right? You know, like sort of exactly what state it's in without needing to talk to each other, which is very useful if you guys are on different schedules or whatever.
That way, if he's able to be like, you know, hey, I left off here, could literally pick it up from there,
Yeah.
move forward with trust that everything up to that point is going to be consistent.
Yeah.
Moving forward from there.
Beyond that, I think the sooner you get started on picking games and finding test areas in them, the
Oh, that's
better,
going to start
'cause-
tonight.
Okay, yeah.
That's going to start tonight. Because I don't have a lot of prep time for
that-
this next launch.
Yeah, that eats up time. It definitely.
Maybe another useful thing Patch can speak to as well is if you, I don't know, when you're testing this stuff, so do you tend to do multiple of you guys on the team tend to be hands-on at some point with the same product? Like how often are you trading back and forth?
I feel like Phil tends to handle more of the regression side. I tend to handle the whatever the current product is, unless for some reason the scheduling works out that I'm unavailable at the time. Then he'll handle it. He'll provide me the data, and I'll kind of go over it, and I'll look for another set of eyes on data. Is never a bad thing, right?
For a major review, it's like a GPU or CPU launch, you know it well, and I'm sure the audience has heard reviewers complain about it, but it's often like a week, can be less, to review something. And that's if you use all of the days, there's no days off, and you use all of the hours.
And if they don't throw a last-minute driver at you.
Yeah, and the only way to actually do that without like running people into the ground is really careful logistics and time management. So like the way we do it, we've gotten pretty good with this these days. But the last GPU round we did, we had 24-hour coverage throughout the day testing.
I need to get closer.
And the way we achieved that is basically one of our guys likes to come in early, so he would cover whatever 8 hours in the morning, like say 5 or 6 a.m. until like 2 p.m. or something. Patrick would pick it up. They'd overlap for about 2 hours, and then I would cover all night.
So you guys really are kind of like almost doing like 3 shifts at that point.
Basically, for the major launches, yeah, I try to take the the worst one because I don't mind it. And it's also just like understanding what is acceptable and what isn't for your team. But the point of it is we're able to do this now where, at least for them, I'm really not like getting into OT really that much for these reviews anymore.
Yeah.
Which is nice. And so the way we can handle that is like the handoff between people is really structured. So I don't know, like what are the types of, when you're working with Mike, you post these big updates.
Yeah, so just, I mean, the way we typically do it is just, I'm recording what I did throughout the day and what issues I ran into and what tests I'm setting up, and then leaving that for Mike, and then he's picking it up, and then we're leaving all of that for Steve, and then he's maybe wrapping that into like the bigger SOP instructions that we're getting. If it's just you and Phil, maybe you're having like just a conversation about that, I don't know, but definitely having like a written record of like
Bless you.
Yeah, so that's like a big thing, is like documenting the stuff in between testing. It helps a lot.
Well, I mean, and that's something that
Great to
my
meet
expertise,
you. Keep
well,
your
I
feet
shouldn't
on the
say expertise,
ground.
but my experience in doing QA in software will help. I can come up with checklists and stuff, or find a tool for us to at least manage it.
Right.
You know, that way there's no question about, did anything get missed? Did something get, skipped, or Phil left off here? I can pick up from where his last check mark was, and obviously a place to leave notes and stuff. Because right now the notes will just kind of get left in our no, it's directly on the spreadsheet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if he has a run and something weird about it, he'll note it on the spreadsheet. But I have to go now looking for those notes. Right. So having them more in a centralized location that references the spreadsheet.
Yeah, we'd basically do centralized spot, and then the spreadsheet will have a comment on the specific thing that's in question. What is so over the next, I don't know, like year or something, as you're trying to figure out how you want to expand testing, what's your goal? Like, where do you see it going from a content perspective?
Yeah, so not just on like the GPU, CPU side of stuff, but I want to get into more lockdown methodology on clear testing, case testing. Being able to actually be able to measure main differences or even micro differences between like different types of water blocks, different types of radiator, fin count, all that sort of stuff. But having the way to capture the data in a consistent manner. So it means obviously if I want to do whatever an open loop measurement is, come up with that methodology, standardize it, and then use that as our formula going forward. So I want to take this kind of stuff that you're teaching me at a foundational level with just the GPU testing, but find ways that applies to any product.
Yeah.
I feel like 2024 was like the year, this is the least amount of water cooling content I've ever made in a year. But it's also been kind of a depressing year, to be honest.
For water cooling, why is that?
Not just that, but I think almost industry-wide, But I mean, I am in some early discussions right now with some brands that are kind of trying to fill the vacuum that's been left right now. I'm excited for what 25 might hold, but I'm trying to curb my enthusiasm at the moment without getting too excited just to be let down.
I think there's a lot of cool stuff going on right now. Cases, there's some awesome cases coming out. Coolers have been absolutely killing it. Like the amount of progress in coolers, which is like a heat pipe, which is a technology NASA wrote a white paper on like 70 years ago. And then copper, and they're still making it actually better.
Yeah.
That's pretty encouraging.
Yeah.
Battle Mage was a surprise at how well it did.
Yeah.
That was nice. AMD did
Well, like I said, he
with
did all the
their
testing for Battle Mage, and because I was out of town, and I came back in and was going over the numbers, and that's why I was just so confused. I'm like, okay, so it's actually meeting the expectation that was set. So one, is that truthful? Like, is they really? And then the third party card, literally scoring exactly the same except for like one test.
That's not too crazy. That earlier you asked for specific examples of like things that I've seen that you could work on. That one you could actually run with this, with what you have now, which is thermal testing and acoustics for those are what matter. Acoustics a little difficult, especially in your environment.
Yeah, because I can't lock off the ambient sound.
For partner models doing, where they really shine is like acoustics and thermals, and then maybe overclocking support. And so those are like if you want to look at partner model versus another model, those are really the things you hone in on, because the performance, it's like very rarely any different, and when it is, it's boring. It's like margin of error, you know?
Well, even at like a 4090 level, we're talking 1-2 FPS still, even at that range.
And that's why I think, so if anyone watching this is like, okay, well then so why, right? Like, if they're about the same, who cares? The best argument I think anyone can come up with is quality of life type features, which is how annoying is this product from an acoustic standpoint. If you're not sensitive to noise, it doesn't matter. But then thermal management as well. It could be designed so poorly that after some load period, the clocks drop or whatever. Overclock headroom, like, can I push more power into this card with the VBIOS that's on it to have more fun overclocking it? And the percent slider is not good enough, but you have the PMDs now.
Right.
You hook those up in line, you blast the percent slider and see what's the new power level. And even if you don't like personally tune the hell out of it, knowing that you can go from this card does 200 watts, this one can do 220, that tells you there's a lot more potential headroom in that one. So those are kind of like some really cool things you could do, but also, you know, it's just balancing.
So if I'm understanding your feedback correct, it's do the AIBs more of a solid by pointing out the benefits outside of just the performance differential between the two?
I think it's more like basically recognizing that the gaming difference will very rarely matter. And so, okay, well, what do I do then? If the gaming performance doesn't matter, but I still want to do something with this.
Thermal and acoustics.
Yeah, that's kind of where it
It's
goes.
like, how do you do motherboard reviews?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really just, at that point, we have a video coming out about this. It's just what are the physical feature sets on a motherboard now that you
Yeah.
get? Quick release, toolless,
Yeah.
you know,
installation.
some sort of GPU release mechanism.
The big comical ASRock PCIe
That thing-
foot. I've never seen that before. It squeaks like a. It's a mix between, to use a phrase